stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are reviewing the Guardian cards in the Innsmouth Conspiracy, the 6th deluxe expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. That's right, I said we. We are changing up how we do reviews here at The Whisper in Darkness, so I will be joined by my friend from the Great Old Ones Gaming, Nate, lost in time and space. I'm hoping this new format will maintain the quality of the player card reviews while offering a fresh perspective and freeing up some time so I can focus on producing more of the Arkham Horror LCG content that you love, including deck techs and In the Know. Nate and I are testing a new rating system for the player cards too. The best of the best will receive an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst will receive an Auto Fail. The cards in between will receive +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Play along and post your own ratings for the cards that we review in the comments. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. Cole Monroe Chitty for his fantastic art, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the awesome new intro. Special thanks to Phil Berdicio, the latest member of the Arkham Horror LCG community, to embrace the darkness and throw his support behind the channel. Thank you very much, Phil. Your love of this game and your support for this channel is greatly appreciated. If you find this video useful and you'd like to join Phil on this list of amazing people, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. We are talking about the Guardian cards. The first Guardian card in the pack is Book of Psalms. It is a 3-cost asset with a willpower skill icon and the item, tome, and blessed traits. It enters play with 4 secrets, and it has the following action. Spend 1 secret, heal 1 horror from an investigator at your location. Add 2 blessed tokens to the chaos bag. The Book of Psalms takes a hand slot. What are your first impressions, Nate?
I think apart from playing this in Carolyn, I don't really see much purpose for it. It's a little too expensive at 3 resources, and my experience with blessed tokens, like, unless you have something else to facilitate those blessed tokens, they are marginally useful a lot of the time.
Yeah, I got that impression as well. I mean, you can play this card in pretty much every Guardian, off-class Guardian, and especially Carolyn, because it does have that heal 1 horror clause, and it has the blessed trait, so it's a fair game for Mateo. And it is one of the few ways to add blessed tokens to the game. I just don't understand why it, I mean, it costs 3 resources. We've seen this sort of card before in First Aid, which actually costs less than this one and allows you to heal horror and damage. So you're basically taking an action to add 2 blessed tokens to the chaos bag. Now, there aren't that many ways of adding blessed tokens, but this seems to be, at least in solo anyway, taking an action to add 2 blessed tokens is that's pretty steep.
Yeah, it does combo pretty nicely with a card that we'll talk about later, however. So if you were playing those 2 cards in tandem with each other, then you might be able to get some additional use out of the 2 blessed tokens. But again, this is one of those cards that it needs something else in order for it to be really useful, whether it's Carolyn's ability or some way to use the blessed tokens itself.
Yeah, I guess I guess for me, whether this will actually see play is, I think with Sister Mary, she gets two blessed tokens at the beginning and adds 1 blessed token every at the end of every round. If your typical game is, say, 12 rounds, that's another say 11 tokens in the bag. Whether there are going to, I think the key is whether there are going to be enough cards that actually use those tokens. Whether Sister Mary will simply put enough tokens in the bag by herself that you don't need something like this, or whether you're going to need a lot of these cards that add extra tokens in order to fuel fuel those abilities. We haven't seen that many cards in this deluxe expansion that use the tokens. Most of the cards either add tokens or they don't really offer ways to leverage them. So, but we have seen cards coming in future Mythos packs that have that leverage them, like Smite, Radiant Smite from Devil Reef. So yeah, I don't see myself playing this card, at least in solo. I just feel like taking a bunch of actions to add blessed tokens to the bag is not particularly useful unless you have some way of leveraging those tokens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess the other thing worth noting is that you can trigger it for free with Knowledge is Power, which is nice. Carolyn can take Seeker cards, can she not?
Yes, she can.
So yeah, if she can, if you're playing Carolyn and you add a couple Knowledge is Power, she can trigger this for free, which is, I guess if you're free is better than spending an action. But when I'm playing solo, actions are so precious that I just don't see myself being able to spend them on something like this.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting about this card too is that it uses secrets. So Guardians have a much more difficult time refilling it if they ever wanted to do that.
Yeah, I was looking at like supplies would be much easier for them because they have Venture who can dump supplies on it. Secrets, I think even Seekers are pretty much have cornered the market on adding secrets to things. Even Mystics, like you've got Diana and Sister Mary, can't really. I think they've got Enraptured, so they can add one secret to this thing if they want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, adding secrets is not particularly easy for Guardians or Mystics, and so. But I mean, with Sister Mary, she's already dumping so many tokens in the bag that I don't know if she will need a card like this. And then if you are just building a blessed deck out of another investigator, I don't know whether I want to take the actions to to play this, the 3 resources to put it on the table, and then an action every time I want to add a couple blessed tokens. And I was doing the math on the blessed tokens, and they, the odds of drawing them is pretty small if you just have 1 or 2 in the bag. I feel like you really need to go all in on blessed if you're hoping to draw them. If you're hoping to leverage them, well, they just need to be in the bag. So, So what rating would you give this card?
In the obscure rating system that we came up with, I'd probably give it an Elder Thing. I think there's like one specific Carolyn deck that I would play it in, but I think apart from that, in its current state, I don't think I would play it.
Yeah, I was thinking Elder Thing as well, just because it has potential in a small number of decks, but it's not going to see a ton of play in run-of-the-mill investigators. Moving on, we have the second Guardian card in the pack. This is Blessed Blade. It is a 3-cost asset with a combat skill icon, the item, weapon, melee, and blessed traits. It has the action, if Blessed Blade is ready, fight. You get +1 combat for this attack. If a Blessed or Elder Thing token is revealed during this attack deals +1 damage. Before revealing Chaos tokens for this attack, you may exhaust Blessed Blade to add 1 Blessed token to the Chaos bag, and it takes up a hand slot. What do you think about this one, Nate?
So I think kind of similar to Book of Psalms, like apart from very specific decks that can pull out a bunch of tokens, this is going to be a pretty hard sell, I think, a lot of the time over weapons like the 45 or the machete. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's another way to add blessed tokens to the bag, which is decent. I think in Sister Mary it might be okay, just because again you're adding so many tokens, and if like you're using this on your 3rd action, you can just exhaust it to add another one for free. But apart from that, I think it's going to be difficult, I think, to consistently get that extra damage proc off.
Yeah, I think I sort of feel like what the designers did with a lot of these Guardian cards is they took sort of marginal cards to begin with and then slapped, add bless tokens to the bag on top of them. In this case, with Book of Psalms, it was like they took first aid and just said, okay, well, we'll add a couple of bless tokens to the bag and that'll make it okay. In this case, this is basically a knife.
For all intents and purposes.
A knife that costs triple the amount of a regular knife, and the odds of actually seeing any of these blessed tokens or like a blessed or elder sign token is unless you've just packed the bag full. Like if you manage to get 10 blessed tokens into the bag, and we're talking about an Innsmouth conspiracy bag here, and I believe that bag starts with 20 tokens in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so you've got 30 tokens in the bag. If you've still got 10, you've only got a 33% chance of actually pulling a token with this. So it's not even reliable in that respect. And because you can you've got to exhaust it if you want to add that token in. You can only use this once per turn, which is not certainly doesn't inspire me to play it. And then it just, the odds of pulling one of those blessed or elder sign token, I did some calculations on Sister Mary. If she, say at the start of the turn, if she starts with 2 blessed tokens in the bag, and then this thing can dump a third in there, but I think it's, even with those 3 tokens, you've only got an 18% chance of actually pulling one of them. So you're fighting with a knife. So unless there's some sort of enemy in the Innsmouth conspiracy that that you require a blessed weapon to attack, I just don't see why I would be playing this thing. Especially at triple the cost of a knife. It does synergize with cards that reveal additional tokens like Dark Prophecy and Olive McBride. But at that point, you're playing other cards to try to make a fairly mediocre card good, which is not something I think people should be doing.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it exactly. Especially with damage, like that's something that you're going to want consistently when you need it, rather than trying to finick with the bag, because it's often very cruel to the investigators.
Yeah. I just see myself playing this, and even if you did manage to stack the bag with blessed tokens, which I've heard some anecdotes from players who said playing Sister Mary, they had more blessed tokens in the bag than they could possibly use. The odds of pulling a blessed token are still pretty low, and I could just see myself fighting with this thing and just failing miserably, at a clutch moment when I need to pull that blessed token and just not getting anything for it. And so, I don't feel like paying 3 times the price for a knife that is not particularly reliable.
Yeah, it's like comparing this to even something like the Enchanted Blade from the Circle Undone. It's hard to like sell this to anyone, I think.
Yeah, and at least the Enchanted Blade has the relic trait, so it's good, in those scenarios like in the Path to Carcosa and the Circle Undone that feature poltergeists and wraiths. At least the Enchanted Blade gives Guardians a way of attacking them. Bless doesn't do anything to those, so maybe if this had the relic trait, it might be
Which I was kind of surprised it didn't, honestly.
Yeah, it seems like one of those cards that should have relic on it, and maybe, I don't know. I took a brief look at the enemies for another card we're going to look at, but I didn't see any blessed vulnerabilities. So if you want to pay triple for a knife and hope that you can draw some tokens, then I mean, maybe if Sister Mary plays it and she's playing, I mean, she can take Dark Prophecy and Olive McBride. She might be able to get some to leverage this a little bit, but I just don't see it happening. I'm going to give this one an Elder thing as well, because I don't see myself playing it all that often.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think apart from Sister Mary, I don't think anyone's going to be playing this card.
Yeah, I've heard some people playing it in Zoe as an offhand weapon to just throw a bless token in the bag from time to time, I guess. But
yeah,
I mean, there's so many.
Just play Enchanted Blade. Like, why aren't you just playing that? I guess.
Yeah, I agree. All right, the third Guardian card in the pack is Rite of Sanctification. It is a free asset with an intellect skill icon, the Ritual and Blessed trait. You seal up to 5 Blessed tokens. If Rite of Sanctification has no tokens sealed on it, discard it. And as a response, when an investigator at your location plays a card, exhaust Rite of Sanctification and release a Chaos token sealed on it to reduce the cost of that card by 2. It takes an Arcane slot. What do you think about this one, Nate?
So I was alluding to this card earlier when we were talking about Book of Psalms. This card is very good in Sister Mary, given that she starts with blessed tokens in the bag. This is a way to facilitate resource generation in a way with her specifically. But I think apart from that, this is a little slow, given that you need to put blessed tokens in the bag before it can even be played. Can be challenging for anyone that's not Sister Mary. But the ability is very good. Yeah. And the fact that it takes up an Arcane slot in Guardian is also very good as well, since that's a slot they don't use very often.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you're playing Guardians or off-class Guardians, I mean, here's another Blessed card from Mateo, which is adds to his deck building options. Mateo seems to do extremely well in this deluxe expansion. Lots of non-mystic Blessed cards for him to play around with. I think the big thing about this card is that it can reduce the cost of any asset or event by 2, which is I don't think we've seen that on a card in the past. Most of them, like Uncage the Soul, are very specific in their targets. Uncage the Soul being like spell cards. I believe Robes of Endless Night are spell cards. So the ability to reduce the cost of any card as a response, so you're not taking attacks of opportunity or anything like that, is really good. It seems like the designers are really pushing sign magic in this deluxe expansion, because they have all of these assets that are not combat or evasion assets that are taking up Arcane slots, and because this has the Ritual trait, this does qualify to fill that spot. I don't know whether I'm going to be playing sign magic, but I guess it depends on the type of Sister Mary build that you're going for, whether that Arcane slot matters or not. If you lean more heavily into the Guardian side of things, then the Arcane slot isn't going to be an issue. If you're leaning more into the Mystic side of things, then you're potentially running into conflicts with things like Shriveling and Mists of Rillier and stuff like that. And I totally agree with you. Like, unless you're playing Mary, who can basically, she gets two Blessed tokens in the bag right off the bat. So if you play this turn 1, you're getting you can seal 2 Blessed tokens on it, and then you're reducing the cost of 2 cards by 2, that's pretty nice. I mean, that's 4 resources. That goes a long way to solving a lot of the resource issues that Guardians have. But unless you're playing Sister Mary and you have a way of getting those Blessed tokens in the bag quick, this thing is going to be a tad slow.
Yeah. What's interesting too is that it puts the blessed tokens back into the bag. It releases them rather than putting them like back in the token pool, which is nice too. So you actually get to potentially use the blessed tokens later on. So
Yeah, and that's going to be important when we see more of these cards like Rite of Sanctification that tries to leverage those tokens. So while you can seal up to 5 at the beginning, those tokens do go back in, so you have a chance of either pulling them during a skill test and maybe passing something that you hadn't planned on passing, or leveraging those tokens for another effect, like some of the spells that we've seen coming out later in the Mythos packs. So I'm going to give this one I'm going to go 0.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Just as I think it's sort of a middle of the road card. Like, I think it'll see some play, and it's quite useful. I'm sort of tempted between +1 and 0. I think in Sister Mary it's probably closer to a +1, but I think for other investigators it's going to be a 0.
Yeah, I'm kind of there. I think in Sister Mary, this is like probably close to a signature card for her, just given the way it interacts with her. I think free resources for basically no cost other than an action is pretty good in her. But yeah, apart from that, like, it's definitely a card you have to build around, and then it's kind of dependent on the rest of the cards that facilitate it. You know what I mean? Like, since it requires cards that put blessed tokens into the bag, its usefulness is only as useful as those cards are.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you really want to draw this early, because that's when the resource crunch is the heaviest, is early in the game. But I think unless you're playing Sister Mary, you've got to get all those blessed tokens into the bag. So that's going to delay playing this a little bit, and then by the time you get this down on the table, you may not need it. You may not need the. I think what really saves it is that the response, that you can use it for any reduce the cost of any card. So it's always going to be useful, unlike some of the cost reduction cards that limit you to, say, items and stuff like that you may not be playing later in the game.
Yeah, and you can use it on other investigators too. So you can help other investigators pay for things, which is cool too. Yeah. I could potentially see maybe Nathaniel taking a card like this, because it doesn't take up a slot that he really cares about. And since his whole deck is reliant on playing events, he actually can fairly regularly use the response to reduce the cost of those events. So I could potentially see a Nathaniel deck playing.
Yeah, I think a lot of Nathaniel's events are pretty cheap already. Like, a lot of them, he doesn't have a lot of very expensive events, so it's possible. Certainly worth experimenting with. I think this is probably the card I like the most in the Guardian set, for sure, and I think it gives us a glimpse of what is going to be coming up in terms of leveraging those blessed tokens to actually do something else besides pull them from the chaos bag for a +2 or something like that. All right, and we're moving on to the final card of the pack. It is Hand of Fate. This is a Guardian event that costs 3 resources. It has willpower and combat skill icons. It has the spell and blessed traits. It is fast, and when you play when an enemy attacks an investigator at your location, you can cancel that attack, then add blessed tokens to the chaos bag equal to the attacking enemy's total combined damage and horror values. So I did a quick peek at the enemies in the Innsmouth conspiracy, just to see how many blessed tokens you can expect to get with this thing, and the number is about 2. That seems to be about the average.
Yeah.
So,
like, unless you're canceling like a boss enemies 2 and 2. This is very expensive for what it does.
Yes, we've had. I mean, I think this is sort of doubly problematic just because we've had. I mean, dodge has been in the game since the core set. The designers tried something like this with Hypnotic Gaze back in the Dunwich Legacy, I believe that came out. And Hypnotic Gaze is basically this card without the blessed tokens on it, and I've never played it, and I don't know many decks that do because it is so expensive, and it doesn't synergize with Uncage the Soul, so you can't reduce its cost. Now you could use this in combination with the Rite of Sanctification to bring this thing's cost down by 2, but then you can just play dodge as well, and that will do basically the same thing, except for the blessed tokens. I think people see like add blessed tokens equal to the enemy's total combined damage and horror values, and they get very excited. But then when you actually look at the enemies that are in the Innsmouth conspiracy, I mean, most of them either are 1-1s or 1-0s. There's very rarely that you're getting 3 for this. So 3 resources is a big issue for me. I mean, it does have the spell trait, so it does synergize with all of those cards that use that key off that trait, like Arcane Initiate and Diana and Robes of Endless Night and whatnot. So there are some cards in there that you could play it for cheaper. Again, this doesn't work with Uncage the Soul because you'd end up taking an attack of opportunity anyway, so that's not an option. So if you want to play this for cheap, Rite of Sanctification is really the way to go.
The only way, yeah. Yeah, I think this card's kind of a huge stinker.
Yeah. I'm going to give it an Elder Thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it has a certain possibly it has potential in if you're going all in on the blessed tokens and you need another way to add them, but I think if you're expecting this thing to fill the bag for you, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, for me it's too expensive.
Yeah.
I think 3 resources is a lot to ask, even given the synergies that it has with other cards.
Yeah. So that is going to do it for the Guardian cards in the Innsmouth Conspiracy. What do you think overall, Nate? I'm fairly disappointed, actually, in a lot of these cards. The only one that really stands out to me is Rite of Sanctification. The rest of them seem like I said earlier, they seem like sort of mediocre cards that had some the blessed mechanic splashed over them in a hope of actually to making them playable, and I'm not sure they are outside of a really dedicated blessed deck.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think part of it is because of the investigator that's in the pack itself. You know, since she adds so many blessed tokens to the bag, that it's probably difficult to add more like powerful options within the deluxe box, I would assume. But it comes at a cost, you know, since her ability is so focused in what it does. It kind of means that she needs these very focused cards, which I think is kind of my bigged gripe with this mechanic, is that once this cycle is over, that's all we're gonna see of it.
Yeah. If I mean, the seal mechanic was introduced during the Forgotten Age, and we have seen it pop up periodically, but yeah, unless they reprint the core set with blessed tokens in it, I just don't see this. They're not going to be printing cards in the future that really that use this, and I think the other issue for me is that, like, a lot of these cards, either like in the case of Book of Psalms, they require you to, 1, pay resources to play this thing. Then you got to take 2 actions before you even get the blessed tokens, when there are several cards in this box that let you do it at fast. It's just like, why would I spend actions and whatnot when I can get, if you're playing somebody like Tommy and you were looking for tokens, you can play the Survivor card we'll talk about later that gives you 4 blessed tokens at fast speed. It just seems to me, or there's that neutral event as well that gives you 3 at fast speed. It just seems like, why am I bothering with these requiring actions or very expensive cards to do it? And it's not like Guardians have a ton of resources to play around with that to begin with.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And there's also just the fact that the cards, like, even without the blessed trade on them, these cards just feel very mediocre.